Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've been looking at the Heroes of Faerun book, and I wanted to talk about spells for a bit. There's 19 new spells in this book, and honestly, they're mostly not great. And I don't want to waste your time going through a bunch of spells that you probably don't want to use. But when I say they're mostly not great, there are some exceptions. There's some good spells here, and I want to concentrate on those. So kind of just point out the highlights from this list, but just be aware that if you buy the book and go through the spells, I would tell you that most of them are not as good as equivalent level spells in the player's handbook. So you might be able to save yourself some time going through them. But yeah, like I said, there's a few standouts, and I thought I'd go over them in this video. First one is Blade of Disaster, and this is a reprint. It was in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, but it has been redesigned. Now, it's a level 9 spell, so level 9. All right, so this is competing with the big guns. And Blade of Disaster in Tasha's was not one of the better 9th level spells, but it wasn't one of the worst either. It was okay, maybe a little below okay, but all right. I used it a couple times and did all right with it. It was a bonus action to cast. That's nice. It had range of 60 feet, concentration up to 1 minute. So you basically have to cast it during the combat. And then you create this magical blade, and you can attack with it. It was definitely better than Mordenkainen's sword. You could attack twice with it using your bonus action. Each hit did 4d12 damage on a hit, and it crit on an 18 to 20 on the die. And if you crit, you did an extra 8d12 on top of the 4d12, so 12d12 total. So crits did a lot of damage. Now, the nice thing about Blade of Disasters is it said right in the spell description that you could move it through any barrier that you want, including Wall of Force. So you can just go through walls, you can go through Wall of Force, Force Cage, whatever you need to get to your enemy. So if you got an enemy trapped, say in a Force Cage, you could send in a Blade of Disaster to get them. Obviously, you'd need different casters to concentrate on each spell. The reprint here is just better. It says you create a 3-foot-long blade-shaped planar rift that lasts for the duration. The rift appears within range in a space of your choice, and you can immediately make up to 2 melee spell attacks, each one against a creature or object within 5 feet of the rift. On a hit, the target takes 10d6 force damage, and this scores a critical hit if the number on the d20 is 18 or higher. So right away, we have a huge improvement. So the original was 4d12 on a hit. This one is 10d6. Both of them attack twice using your bonus action. So obviously 10d6 is a lot more than 4d12. If you think 4d12 on an average is 26, and 10d6 is 35. The increased crit range is the same on both. The one advantage of the old one was it did more damage on a crit, because instead of just doubling your damage, it tripled it. But even if you include the tripling of the damage, assuming you're going to hit, it's 68 points of damage with the old one on average. It's 81 points of damage with this one if you hit. But that's not the only improvement. It also says, as a bonus action on your later turns, you can move the rift up to 60 feet and repeat the 2 attacks against a creature or an object within 5 feet of it. Well, it used to be 30 feet. That was one of the disadvantages of the spell, is that you could end up in a situation where it has trouble getting to an enemy after it takes down the first one. Well, that's much less of an issue when you double the distance. So we have a much more maneuverable blade that does significantly more damage. And like I said, it wasn't a bad 9th level spell before. I'd say it was below average. I'd say this is above average. I'd say this is a fairly good 9th level spell. I don't think it competes with our real big guns like Wish and Shape Change and True Polymorph and Prismatic Wall. But this is still a pretty good 9th level spell. And if I'm something like a sorcerer that has limited options for good 9th level spells, I'd definitely consider it. The next spell on our list is Deryan's Helpful Homunculi. This is a new spell. It's a level 2 conjuration spell for clerics and wizards. Its casting time is an action, or it can be cast ritually. It's a ritual spell. You're always going to cast this as a ritual spell, I think. I don't ever see the point in casting this spell as an action based on what it does. Range itself And components, you need powdered gemstones worth 100 plus gold pieces, which the spell consumes, and 1 set of artisan's tools for which you have proficiency. And the duration is 8 hours, no concentration. And you summon a group of helpful spirits, which lasts for the duration. The spirits appear as homunculi or as another construct of your choice, but they're intangible and invulnerable. And they are considered to have proficiency in the Arcana skill and with a set of artisan's tools used during the spell's casting. If you are crafting an item, and I mean, it all comes down to this last sentence. If you are crafting an item, the spirits function as the single assistant for your crafting, having the crafting time. So that's the point. You are going to be crafting something, you want to do it more quickly, well, you can double your speed for 100 gold pieces and for a full day. And considering the amount you spend for some crafting, 100 gold pieces might not be all that much compared to what you're already spending. And doubling your time is going to be significant a lot of the time. You'll have situations where you'll have a little bit of time between adventures and you want to craft some scrolls. Well, if you're willing to spend a couple 100 gold pieces, you can double the amount of scrolls you create. So I think this is a pretty good spell. If I was a wizard, I'd definitely take it because wizards don't have to prepare rituals. But as a cleric, if I'm in downtime, well, then I can change my preparations so I can just prepare this when I'm in downtime. Now, if you want to do a little bit of crafting, like, you're taking the night off and you're in the middle of a dungeon and, you have a few hours, I don't know if I'd bother as a cleric to make it part of my preparation list, but a wizard might want to spend 100 gold pieces and maybe craft that scroll that they couldn't craft without it. So I think this is pretty good. I definitely not required for any character, but good enough that I'd take it, and that's better than most spells in this book. Then we have Dirge, and Dirge is unique. I don't know if it's super powerful, but I think in the right situations, it is definitely the right cast. It is a level 6 enchantment for bards and clerics, so high level. Casting time is an action, range itself, concentration up to 1 minute. So this is round 1 of a combat. You're going to cast this, and it'll be done, shortly after the combat is over. Deathly power fills a 60-foot emanation originating from you for the duration. When you cast a spell, you can designate creatures to be unaffected by it. Any other creature can't regain hit points while in the emanation. Whenever the emanation enters a creature's space, and whenever a creature enters the emanation or ends its turn there, the creature makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d10 necrotic damage and has the prone condition. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and its speed is halved. A creature only makes its save once per turn. Now, the key here is if we look at it and, we're just looking at the damage and not, recovering hit points, I look at this and I think level 6, well, I could do 3d8 with Spirit Guardians with a level 3 spell. So why on earth would I want to expend a level 6 spell to do 3d10? Well, it's the emanation. It is 60 feet. That is massive for an emanation for this kind of spell. We have other kinds of spells like this. We have Conjure Woodland Beings, but nothing has an emanation more than like 15 feet. So 60 feet, we're covering, unless it's a very large map, we're covering the entire battlefield. Now, against a single big enemy, I don't think this would be that helpful unless it's really important to keep that enemy from regaining hit points. Where I think this is going to be really good is if you have a pretty big battlefield and it's cluttered, if there's a lot of enemies on there. Well, then Dirge can hit a ton of enemies every turn and do a little bit of damage to them. But if you have a ton of enemies, they probably don't have a ton of hit points. So this could be really effective for that. The prone condition, I'm not sure if that's a big advantage. But being able to do that little bit of damage and potentially prevent healing as well, I think in the right situations, I'd definitely cast this spell. Next spell is Spellfire Storm. This one I think is pretty good in the right circumstances. We have a level 4 evocation for sorcerers and wizards, 1 action casting time, 60-foot range, concentration up to 1 minute. So again, like a round 1 spell, or later in the combat, I could see potentially casting this spell. It says you conjure a pillar of spellfire in a 20-foot radius, 20-foot high cylinder centered on a point within range. The area of the cylinder is bright light, and each creature in it, when it appears, makes a Constitution saving throw, taking 4d10 radiant damage on a failed save, or half as much on a successful one. It's not a ton of damage for a 4th level spell, to be honest, especially one that's using concentration. Creature also makes a save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or ends its turn there. The creature makes this save only once per turn. So far, it's looking a little bit like maybe an upcast Moonbeam. In addition, whenever a creature in the cylinder casts a spell, that creature makes a Constitution saving throw. On a failed save, the spell dissipates with no effect, and the action, bonus action, or reaction used to cast it is wasted. If the spell was cast with the spell slot, the slot isn't expended. When you cast this spell, you can designate creatures to be unaffected by it. And using a higher level spell slot, the damage increases by a d10 for every spell slot level above 4. You might notice there's no way to move this. So this isn't really like an upcast Moonbeam. An upcast Moonbeam would do the same damage, but you could move it around on your turn. This one stays where it is. So if I'm a caster and I get hit with this, yeah, sure, it's going to make it harder for me to cast spells, but 20-foot radius cylinder isn't that far. I definitely don't have more than 20 feet to go to get out of it, so why don't I just walk out of it and then cast my spell? Well, that's where you would want to use a little bit of strategy, because if you can keep those spellcasters in the Spellfire Storm, and notice it doesn't make it difficult terrain or restrain them or anything like that, you'd need some other method to keep them in there. Well then, a Constitution saving throw for every spell they cast, that's like a counterspell being cast on every spell they cast. That's pretty good. So it would definitely need to be a way that you could keep the spellcaster in there. Then I could see Spellfire Storm being pretty good. Because otherwise, I mean, the damage, considering that you can't move it, isn't enough. So you would really need to be screwing up spellcasters with this, and in order to screw them up, they can't just walk out of it. So I think this is an okay spell. Good enough to make my list today, because that's not a very high bar, but in the right combinations, I think it could be really good. A counterspell on every spell that everyone in the cylinder casts is pretty good for a 4th level spell. It's just a matter of finding a way to keep them in there. Maybe you cast this over a web or something like that. The last spell I want to cover is Sylune's Viper, level 3 Conjuration for Druids and Wizards. This is a bonus action to cast and lasts an hour. There's no concentration, so you can cast this out of combat, and it's not going to restrict what you do after that. A shimmering spectral snake encircles your body for the duration. You gain 15 temporary hit points, and the spell ends early if you have no temporary hit points left. So just be aware, if you lose the temporary hit points, you'll lose the spell. I would assume that, like other spells of this kind, if you have another source of temporary hit points, if you can give yourself more temporary hit points, it will last longer. But even if you only have the 15, if you are not being targeted with damage, this could be a very good spell for you. First off, it gives you a climb speed, and we don't care. Second thing is it gives us a venomous bite. This is the one we care about. As a magic action, you can make a ranged spell attack using the snake against one creature within 50 feet. On a hit, the target takes a d6 force damage, which is terrible for a magic action using a 3rd level spell, and has the poison condition until the start of your next turn. That's okay. I still don't think it's worth a 3rd level spell. Well, poison, the target has incapacitated condition. And there we go. So the incapacitated condition means you can't take actions. You can move, but you can't take actions. So that's the advantage here, is we can use our magic action and we can set this up with one spell slot. We're not going to lose it due to concentration. The only time we'll lose it is if we lose our temporary hit points. And round after round after round, we can have, if I hit you, you're incapacitated. Now, they have to be poisoned in order to be incapacitated. So just be aware, a lot of creatures are immune to poison. So they can't be incapacitated either. They have to have the poison condition to be incapacitated. So it's not going to be good against every kind of enemy, But the enemies that aren't immune to poisoned, this is not bad, especially if you're wanting to save some spell slots. I mean, you can definitely cast a spell, if you're capable of casting 3rd level spells, that is going to be more effective than the Venomous Bite. But if you want to only use the 1/3 level spell slot, this could cover you for multiple combats, giving you the ability to use a magic action on your turn to attack and attack and attack. And you'd want to stay out of the way so you're not being targeted with attacks, so you can keep those temporary hit points. And then I think it's fairly decent. It might be the strongest spell that I've covered on this list, and this is the final spell I'm covering. The rest of the spells in this book are all below average, at least, and some of them suck. So these are the ones that don't suck. All the spells that I just went over, I think if I was to do a tier list, they'd be a B rank, and B rank is good enough that I might take them. I might take those spells. So if you are wanting to try some different spells, I'd suggest looking at the spells I just covered. Otherwise, tomorrow I think I'm getting early access to Eberron, the new Eberron book, so I'm going to be taking a look at that. So probably on Friday, I'm going to have something to say about Eberron, and there's more Heroes of Faerun stuff I haven't covered, so it's just going to go on the back burner. Doesn't mean I won't cover it. I'll probably get there eventually, but I wanted to go over just kind of the main stuff before Eberron came out. And that's it. Otherwise, until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.